You mentioned about how you, when you first did this, doing the sonnets, and it was quite a nerve-wracking interpretation. I mean, undertaking. Yeah. Do you feel? And this is a question that's come in from outside. Do you feel nervous now taking on this interpretation of the sonnets? Is it still controversial?
Yeah, it certainly is. One of the Toronto critics dismissed it absolutely as balderdash. He, I presume, is a great Shakespearean scholar himself. Because that's
as they all are. As they all are.
No, that doesn't make me nervous, because it's very clearly presented as a possible version of the story, a possible explanation. In fact, I invite the audience very much to think about it, and indeed, I think I say very clearly, you treat everything I say with deep suspicion.
Yes.
Because who knows?
Yes.
No, but it is a bit nerve-wracking, because it's a lot of poems to have learned.
It is, yes. And you have actually learned them. This is not a reading. I mean, this is very much a staged, I think we want to make this clear, that this is a staged performance.
Yes. That dimension of it is entirely thanks to the director, Michael Langham. It was his idea to actually put it on its feet in the way that it has been. And I find it personally very helpful indeed.
Yeah.
So the Dark Lady is there, in a sense. Everyone's aware of her up there somewhere, and the young man pops up from time to time.
That's right, you're addressing it. So that he was not merely a director in a sense, but you could almost say he was kind of a dramaturge in a way on this project, shaping it.
Well, yes, but in the same way that I think, as I'm sure he would say, that any director takes material and just decides what form to embody it.
Sure.
To embody it.
Now, someone sent in a question here. If the sonnets were deliberately scrambled to conceal identities, how were they originally published? I'm not quite sure what...
They were originally published in a scrambled order.
Yes.
So the 1609 version is a series of apparently unconnected poems.
Yeah.
The original order told a story very clearly.
Yes.
The order in which they were written, that is to say.
Right.
But they had never been published. This is just the order in which they were written.
Right.
And so John's view is that the mother of William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke by then, published them because she was such an admirer of Shakespeare's genius that she wanted the public to be able to receive the poems, but she didn't want them to know the background.
Right.
Out of which William Herbert didn't come with much credit.
Yeah. Now, obviously these were written as poems. They weren't written for the stage as such. As an actor, what was, for you, what's the biggest challenge of making those poems theatrical, of acting the poems in a sense?
The biggest problem is essentially the rhyme scheme.
Yeah.
Because it's A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, C, C.
Right.
You have a kind of there's a sort of formal aspect to it, which in a way you want to counteract, because otherwise it would seem monotonous, that it's always the same. 14 lines, 14 lines, 14 lines, 14 lines, each ending with a rhyming couplet.
Right.
So in a sense, although I don't want people not to be aware of the rhyme or the form of it, I'd like to carry them over from one sonnet to another. It's exactly like musical form, you know? I mean, it would be like playing Chopin's 28 preludes and 24 preludes and wanting to kind of create shapes within that overall structure. It's very challenging. It is very challenging indeed. It's definitely, these poems were not written to be acted.
Yes.
And they're very complex, some of them in language, more complex perhaps than Shakespeare would ever allowed play.
Yes, they're hard to read on the page in many ways, and yet when you hear them, you wrote something in your book, Being an Actor, that has always stuck in my mind about speaking that language, that you said something about you'd been going for the wrong word, and that you discovered that the second half of the line, like as the waves make toward the pebbled shore.
Exactly. That's a very basic thing, and that was Peter Hall who taught me that. Very, he very kindly just said, "I'll give you a little lesson about this," and it's absolutely true of the sonnets, but it's also true probably of almost all poetry, but very, very much so. It's part of the English language. The meaning of any sentence tends to reside towards the end of it, like the one I've just uttered, for example. And we as actors sometimes do like the colour of a word, and we could very easily go like as the waves. I mean, waves is a lovely word, isn't it?
Yes.
Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore. But that's not the idea in the image at all.
Yes.
It is like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore.
Yes.
That's the whole drifting. Or shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Not shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Exactly.
It's very elementary, but it makes a big difference.
But it makes a huge difference. Here's an interesting question. I saw I'm reading this off a board, in case you're wondering. I saw the performance last night and wondered, who are you when you're delivering the sonnets? Are you yourself, or Shakespeare, or someone else? Now, there's a fascinating question.
It's a good question. I certainly don't consciously try to recreate the personality of William Shakespeare.
Yes. Although I have to say, someone said to me at intermission, it's like having Shakespeare talk to us.
Ah, well, I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Unlooked for triumph there. I partly obviously have to use myself in the sense of what I know about life or emotional, my own experiences. I think that the poems as written, as I said earlier, are tremendously authentic. They have this tremendous sense of lived life in them. And then I hope, yes, if I get in touch with the thoughts in Shakespeare's mind, then the chances are I will, to some extent, become Shakespeare. But if I were to actually try to do it in the person of Shakespeare, I don't know whether that would be a plus or a minus. I don't know whether it would come between me and the poem, or whether it would release it. It might.
Based on that, perhaps a little bit, do the sonnets seen in this light, do they help us to quash or dismiss that lingering theory that Shakespeare may not have written his plays, but that some unnamed lord did, or as someone used to say, you know, plays weren't written by Shakespeare, but by some other Elizabethan of the same name.
Right, exactly. No, yeah. Well, the prevailing theories of alternative authorship are that it was, well, of course, there's a charmingly insane theory about Christopher Marlowe having not died but disappeared to the continent and sent back, 37 plays. But the main contender at the moment is the Earl of Oxford.
Right.
The poems are unrelentingly about the social differences between the poet and the young man.
Right.
About how noble he is, how aristocratic, and how unworthy the poet is. I don't think the Earl of Oxford would have been writing like that. The whole theory to me is just completely bananas. The idea that the most famous writer of his day could have been a front for somebody else, and that in that little village, which was Elizabethan London, that nobody found out about it or said anything about it is simply incredible.
Yes.
Inconceivable.
Well, it's the other thing that's always seemed odd to me is that, you know, he wrote, well, depending on how you count them, anything between 37 to possibly even 40 plays.
Yeah.
You know, this doesn't seem like the output of an aristocratic dilettante. This sounds like the output of someone doing it for a living.
Absolutely right. And that's exactly the feeling of the plays. They have a wonderful sense of life in the theatre, of what's practical, what isn't. I would go so far as to say only an actor could have written Shakespeare's plays. We don't know how good an actor he was, or he didn't seem to be playing leading parts as far as we know, but that's not clear.
Well, it would seem a bit much if the greatest genius dramatist was also a really brilliant actor. That would be unfair.
Well, Molière was.
Well, there is that too.